Welcome back, Beyonders. This is the Tabletop and Beyond podcast. I am your host, Justin. I'm here with Jason
Hey.
and special guest, Robert J. Schwalb of Schwalb Entertainment, the man, the myth, the legend himself. Welcome to the show again, Robert.
Thank you so much for having me. It's good to be back.
Yeah, we are happy to have you here. You are basically waist deep at this point in your Kickstarter campaign. I wouldn't say neck deep because we still got a couple weeks to go, but you're getting there. The water's rising quickly.
Yeah,
Kickstarter campaign.
I'm hoping that it continues to grow and do its thing. It's shocking how stressful Kickstarter can be.
Well, we're excited to talk about Shadow of the Weird Wizard, your Kickstarter campaign, the whole process that you've gone through with this. We've been watching this since way back when, during, the Shadow of the Demon Lord, when we were playing that, and we're seeing you. In fact, the last time you were on, I think in the middle of COVID, we asked you what was next, and you had sort of alluded to this. I think it was rattling around in your brain, close to your fingertips of typing it out on the computer. And so here it is in fruition. So we're excited to talk about that with you today. So, but before we get started, let's do our Geek Week. Jason, how was your Geek Week, buddy?
Man, well, I've been traveling for my Geek Week, so I'm going to step back a little bit. Before I was traveling, I actually went on vacation with my family, had a reunion. We went to the beach. And right before that, my wife and I decided to get ready for the beach. What better to do than watch the movie The Meg, right? So with Jason, Statham, is that how you say his name?
Statham, yeah.
Yeah. Also, The Meg 2, I think, was coming out at the time. So, and I tell you, man, that is a fun megalodon shark movie. I mean, it doesn't try to pretend to be anything else than what it is, right? I think, and my wife and I are just on the couch, just like laughing our heads off, right? Like, I think my favorite part of the movie is when the shark literally goes to the beach and just like the people in the water are just like krill to a whale, right? Its mouth is open and it's just mowing down consuming all of these people as it swims on the beach. It's hilarious. So good movie if you get ready to go to the beach near the end of the summer here. Check it out, man. I'm looking forward to finding some time after travel to go see The Meg 2. So that should be fun.
Rob says no to that.
No.
Hard pass, but that's okay.
Good stuff.
Yeah. My daughter saw it, and she's in a creative writing program in her high school, and she says, I think for one of my senior capstone projects that I'm going to do, I'm going to write I'm going to call it the Marine Adventures. Basically, this group of marine biologists that get called together whenever there's a megalodon event.
Okay.
And so they'll, they've got superpowers, but marine adventures.
Okay.
And like totally written tongue in cheek with like the Meg in mind. You know what I mean?
Is it going to be like a Captain Planet thing? Like our powers combined.
So. I hope so.
Okay.
Exactly. I hope so.
Cool.
So very good. Very good. Rob, how was your Geek Week?
Last night I watched so much Star Trek. It was just amazing. So I'm a kind of a weirdo. Big surprise, but
no.
Yeah, I know, crazy. But like, I watch one episode of a show, and then I'll watch another episode of another show, and I go through all of my different streaming services in a big loop. So I never watch rarely do I sit down and just plow through something, because by God, there's too much, and I want a little bit of everything. So I've been, after Strange New Worlds kind of turned me on and got me all hot and bothered, little under the collar. I've been going back to watch the older shows, and so last night I watched, finished an episode of Deep Space Nine, watched a tragically bad episode of Voyager, and an even worse episode of Enterprise. I also caught an episode of Lower Decks, so I've been digging into Star Trek, but now I'm caught up on this tour, and now I'm into another streaming service, because that's just what I do.
Now, so you've been watching. So, and I'm going to cheat a little bit here, Rob, because I saw your Facebook post today of your kind of like Star Trek, evaluations that you've kind of put
Oh,
out
right,
for us.
right.
And I'd also like to point out that I believe you read books the same way. You don't.
Yeah.
You have like a stack of 30 books
Yeah.
that you read simultaneously, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So this is nothing new. It's just streaming now, right?
Right. This is just the other part of my OCD. It's not the main part. It's just a subsection of the larger umbrella of my own personal madness.
So if you had to pick a Star Trek series right now without having finished them in this moment, which one's your favorite?
Deep Space Nine.
Okay.
Oh wow. Okay. Yeah.
Yep. I'm a huge Next Generation fan. Like, I mean, that's the one where I was like 9 years old, cutting my teeth on it, right, on Star Trek, and just like really ignited like the imagination and all that stuff. And Deep Space Nine came on. What was it, like the same year that Next Generation ended, or maybe like a year
really
after, or something like that? Yeah, it was
really
real close. And I don't know that I gave Deep Space Nine the love that I probably should have in that moment, because I was just like, well, it's not Next Generation, like it was like trying to leave one lover for another, and I just couldn't do it right away,
Well, my whole thing with Star Trek was that after I got out of elementary school and middle school, well, elementary school really, I'd go home, and on channel 30 on the UHF dial, you could get the original series. And so I watched Star Trek, and that was how it was. And I watched the classic Star Trek or the original series throughout my early childhood. And so when Next Generation came on, I was ready for it. And I watched the first episode or two, and then my parents divorced, and everything kind of blew up. So it was not a good time for me to be watching. So I lost it. I didn't catch really any of Next Gen until even like, but then when I got older and I was working a job, and then there were drugs and alcohol and all the other distractions of youth and adulthood and later and middle age even. It kept me from really diving into Star Trek. So it was until I was dating my wife to be. And when we got married, we started watching DS9. I guess we started around season 4. We'd watch Next Gen and reruns, and we also watched Voyager. And so I caught the back half of DS9, and I think that seasons 4 through 7 are probably the best Star Trek ever. That said, the original series will always be near and dear, and I think Strange New Worlds is as a love letter to that style of Star Trekkiness. Yeah, it just makes me gooey.
So now, I mean, you have been writing RPGs for a huge chunk of your life. Do you find that like how do you approach watching Star Trek? Because I mean, a lot of times these feel like mini adventures that they're on. Like, does it inspire you? Do you feel like it speaks to you in a different way than other shows do? I mean, obviously it's a lot different than a sitcom, but
yeah, like the episodic format or Monster of the Week or whatever, or Mission of the Week really kind of it does. I don't think it's a conscious thing, but it certainly does inform my approach to writing adventures or quests or other elements for other types of things for role-playing games, because I'm less, I mean, I like having an overarching story, but I'm less concerned about every adventure be a chapter in that story. Does that make sense? I'd rather like the overarching story kind of be something that's churning in the background that may kind of plug in at certain points or have elements that play into the plot, but I'm much more interested in kind of the here's the situation, resolve the situation, wrap it up, get out. And that way, if somebody misses, you don't have to worry about them losing out on the big, chewy, chunky story. I think that style appeals to me, and I think that's probably one of my bigger hangups with Star Trek Discovery is that it's long form storytelling that stretches out, and rather than being mission based, they're all kind of these extended movies, which is an interesting approach because I don't think Star Trek never did that before in television. It just doesn't really work for me.
Yeah. Interesting. Interesting. I think that exact thing that you're talking about with like the main kind of thread of the season or arc of the story kind of turning in the background is exactly what made me love X-Files so much, right?
Oh,
like
yeah.
you had the alien thread that was going on, but you had your, swamp monster of the week or whatever it was, or, kid who got electric powers or whatever it was. So
best line of ever from any TV show was, all those years of D&D taught me something about courage, was an X-Files line. So
that's great.
Sticks with
Awesome.
me.
Yeah.
It can be overdone though. I remember the Supernatural season with the Leviathans. Oh my gosh! By the end of that season, I was like, I don't want to see another Leviathan. Gooey black monster until for the rest of the series.
Yeah,
right. 100%. Well, my geek week, I've been reading Glenn Cook's The Black Company.
Good choice.
And it's a great book. And I got an omnibus of it that I'm reading. So now I'm reading the part about the White Rose, and like it is a awesomely dark military novel. It's so great in the sense of like, no character is super sacred. There's a few that have plot armor. Obviously, the narrator, his name's Croker, right? Like he's the one that's writing the book, so he's going to be around, obviously, But they've had some just kind of wacky deaths and gruesome deaths, and people come and go, and it just very much feels like a mercenary company that's in the service of someone who they absolutely hate. And they hate doing it, but the money's there, right? And so it's a really good book. I assume you've read this before, Rob.
And not only have I read it, I wrote the D20 campaign setting based on it.
Did you really?
Yeah, worked on it with Owen Casey Stevens and Scott Kieran way back in 2003.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. Because I was thinking of how. So, are you familiar with Zweihander?
Yeah.
So they came out with a Blackbirds RPG that was written by Ryan Vernier, and it was basically a skin for the Zweihander. It's basically powered by Zweihander, right? And it's very much like a military sort of RPG style. And I was thinking that like running a Black Company campaign with that system would be actually pretty cool, but I agree. Sat down and put it together.
That'd be pretty good. Yeah, I think it might even trying to bend Black Companies. I mean, the hardest part about that series was trying to make sense of its magic system because Cook didn't have any rules for how magic works, right? I mean, and there are like I could have no magic at all, like Croker. And then I could be silent or a goblin and have like some crazy illusions and know some ritual type magic. And then I'm the Dominator and I can level a city, or the Limper and I'm shooting lime green beams across the battlefield that just cut through hundreds of people in a go. And trying to balance that in like the D20, the third edition D20 system was a challenge. We pulled it off.
I can imagine.
It's very crunchy.
I can only imagine. And I mean, that kind of imbalance in magic, though, like gives it some plot mechanics of the book, right? That are great because, like, I'm at a part now where they're literally on the run from the Taken, and it's like not looking good because it's like those suckers are hard to kill, and they're the equivalent if for those of you who haven't read it, the equivalent would be like Frodo taking on one of the ring wraiths, and trying to come out on top, so it was it's been a great book though. I love reading it, and I think it took me a little while to get into the writing style of it because it read like almost like the beginning of Apocalypse Now. Like where the captain in Apocalypse Now is narrating sort of like what's going on. It's sort of like these war journals, and it kind of gave me that vibe as I was reading it. Right? Like, that this isn't like a novel that you're reading. It's like you're really reading like dispatches from the war front, almost. So.
Yeah, I don't know if this is true or not, but from what I understand, Black Company was written while Cook was working in a factory. And so when his press would go up, he would write a line, and then it would come down, and he'd do the thing, and it would go up, and he'd write another line. I don't. That may be apocryphal, but that was my understanding of why the books read the way the initial ones read the way they do.
Which, it's funny because the later ones feel more novelish.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, and once you get to like Water Sleeps and Soldiers Live, the last two books, it's almost like a completely different writer.
Yeah, so
same themes, but yeah.
Right. It's great though, and I've really enjoyed it. So that's been my Geek Week, is just diving back into this, and it's been really good. So yeah, great times. Very geeky week for all of us. I love it. From the Meg to Star Trek to the Black Company, all good times.
Very good.
Yeah. All right. Well, Rob, we like we said in the beginning, we are happy to have you here on the show to talk about Shadow of the Weird Wizard. Now, I have to say, we've been friends on Facebook for a few years now, actually, and so I have got to see your journey through developing this. There's been some high highs, there's been some low lows, and there's been a whole bunch of in between as you've been cranking on this thing. So why don't we start and maybe again sort of recap what you told us a little bit in 2020, even though you may not exactly remember, but what motivated you to develop
3 years on the night of
exactly.
do you remember what you said? Where's your count now? Go.
Yeah, right. Right. So the thing about Weird Wizard, what kind of drove me to do this, came from some initial reactions to Shadow of the Demon Lord. Mm-hmm. People love the game. They love the mechanics. They love the path system, how combat works, love boons and banes, love all the moving parts of that game, but they bounce really hard off of Hateful Defecation, which is a spell in that game, the Forbidden Tradition. They don't
so much everywhere.
That is a lightning rod spell.
It is, right? I mean, it's like, I know I'm playing something very different when it's got Hateful Defecation as an option, right? So, and that was, that's sure. I'm a 12-year-old boy and I'm German. What do you want from me? Realizing that, and that the fact that Demon Lord is like Evil Dead, the role-playing game, meets Diablo kind of vibe, meant that I was just leaving out a lot of people. So I moved pretty quickly to create a sanitized version. And by meaning moving really quickly, this is as far back as 2015, 2016. And I started blocking in what it would look like. And at first, it was just going to be Demon Lord with all the filth cut out.
The Disneyfied version.
Right. But then I realized I'm doing a disservice to the customers because they can just do this already. Gamers can, if they like the system enough, they can just ignore the Forbidden Tradition.
You can just run it that way.
Right.
Yeah.
So I didn't want to just do that. And so I went back and forth in design, and I guess it was, and I've been noodling with this game for a while. At one point, it was called Shadow the Witch King. It was a Free Companies of Four Towers. I demoed it as Free Companies of Four Towers back in 2018 and 2017. So I've been working on this for a while, but it didn't really start gelling until I had most of Demon Lord that I was going to do, the big chunks of it, kind of in hand. And I started working on it as my next game, and this was probably 5 years ago. And the goal was to make it so that it felt like, while it used the same engine, it would look and play very differently. So at one point, I had every magic using path had its own spells that were part of the path itself, and so you got to customize your path by the spells or invocations or rituals or whatever it gave you. And there were a bunch of other mechanical changes. And then I started play testing it, and then there was a lot of pushback and try to get it to be more like Demon Lord. And after somewhat 60 iterations, we have, we're at where we are, which is basically a complete game that's pretty good and done, with a few minor tweaks here and there. Really, I credit my work with Kim Mohan, the late Kim Mohan, because I guess it was in 2021, 2022, we started working together on this to try to bring it over the finish line. And Kim, rather than just being something that we were all spinning our wheels during the pandemic and that period. And so there was a lot of Rob just writes the game, deletes the game, writes the game, deletes the game, that kind of thing. And so we really started kind of zooming in, and Kim provided a lot of structure and motivation and guidance. And unfortunately, he passed before we were able to get to this point, which is why a lot of I've dedicated the game to him and his legacy, and I'm trying to live up to all the good work that he did for D&D and other games over his career. So yeah, this is kind of a big project for me that's been long in the making, but it's been frustrating or vexing, but it's also at the same time, I think it's probably my best work to date. Jason, I can't hear you.
Yeah.
Would you say that it's been a more difficult path to get to than when you got to the finish line with Shadow the Demon Lord?
For sure. Demon Lord, I had just left Wizard of the Coast. I had a lot of things going on in my head. That game took a development direction that I disagreed with fundamentally. I still think it's a great game. Very proud of the work I did and proud of the work we did as a team. But a lot of that, there was a lot of tension that I needed to release
in the D&D side.
Yeah. So with Demon Lord, I just was like, oh, I don't have to answer to anybody. I can just make whatever the heck I want.
Yeah.
It's all coming out.
Yeah.
And I thought 20 versions of that game was a lot. Had no idea what I was getting into with Weird Wizard. And I was able to really pull together that game really quickly because I left in 2014, did Serious Wizard of the Coast in 2014, right? 2013, yeah, 2014, and then I was done with. We Kickstarter. No, it was 2013, somewhere in there. Doesn't matter. But I was pretty much wrapped up with that, and then we were right at Demon Lord at the end of 2015, and had the game out that December, maybe a little earlier. So it was a pretty fast turnaround, and despite the fact that I had been working around the clock to get it done.
Yeah, cool.
Now, if we were to look at, if I were to take my Shadow of the Demon Lord book and my Shadow of the Weird Wizard book, what are the similarities? What are the differences? I mean, is it a completely different game, or does it still built on some of the same bones?
Bones are the same.
Okay.
I kept the most popular elements of Demon Lord, and they became the sacred cows for this game. You're going to have paths that you'll follow. You'll be able to build your character by making 3 major decisions. So you choose novice path, expert path, master path. Yeah. We have traditions of magic and spells that belong to those traditions, and you can get access to those traditions by choosing various paths. We still use boons and banes. They still function the same way. Some of the nomenclature has changed. We don't differentiate. We don't call attack rolls. We don't call challenge rolls. We just call them rolls, but the target never changes based on what you're doing. So it's a lot of simplification in some respects. So if you know how to play Demon Lord, and if you know how to play Punk Apocalyptic, it's going to be easy peasy. Jump in and you're fine. There are some differences though. Changing one of the great things about being a human being is that you can adjust you can change your mind, and you can amend some of the feelings and ideas you had before. And one of the things that I really came to was a question of ancestries. Trying to get away from this idea that your ancestry can modify your stats when all ancestries are basically occupying the same sphere of like you're just a human, but you're funny looking or whatever. And how to different. And so if that's the case where ancestries aren't going to, where the same range of strength and intelligence and all that stuff are possible within all the ancestries, how do you differentiate these character options from one another using more interesting mechanics than just using the easy lever of, well, +1 strength, -2 will, or whatever. And so what I did with this was that I shoved that design aside and let the mechanics really reflect what they look like, what they do, what they're capable of. And then it also freed me to get away from forcing cultural ideas onto ancestry roles. Like, for example, if you are an elf, being an elf doesn't mean that you have certain beliefs. You're just an elf, and you can have whatever beliefs or attitudes or whatever you want based on your own background and your upbringing and all those other things, and keeping those things relatively separate. There still are, dwarves are going to have, there will be dwarf cultures, of course, but if you are a dwarf who is raised by humans for whatever reason, and this is really minor stuff, but if you're raised by humans, then you're probably not going to be any good at smithing or sniffing out gold, because you probably have no practical experience with that at all, right? So that was one of the big changes. Another minor change is that I was very happy with the way Demon Lord eventually landed on transition between narrative gameplay to tactical gameplay by having it just roll, right? So you say you're talking, you're going back and forth, and combat happens, and then the game master says, "What do you do?" There's not a weird break where you're having to determine turn order, or you have to.
Okay, everybody, do initiative, roll initiative.
Right.
Right?
So do we still have fast and slow turns?
We have 3 phases in combat. We have the sage phase, we have player phase, and we have end of the round.
Okay.
Players can spend a resource or use a reaction to take the initiative, which allows them to act before the monsters. So it means that you don't get to do a free attack, but you get to go ahead and hit them first. And so it's a good trade-off to be able to go ahead of time. And then it also means that we don't have. I found that in Demon Lord, while I still think that it works just fine, there's a dead phase for monsters, right? There's eventually fast. Well, everyone's either going fast, and so slow becomes. It just falls out of the game. So it becomes an extra thing to think of. And so keeping it this way just keeps it going faster. The other thing,
it's funny. I'll just drag on that. My players really actually like the slow phase, believe it or not, because they would get hit with a bleed or something like that, and so they're like, we need to bind these wounds before they bleed out at the end of the turn. So they would be very strategic about when they were going slow, so that they could run over and bandage their buddy up. You know what I mean, and things like that. So
we didn't do that once, and we lost a guy.
And I was very happy to say adios.
All right, so question for you, Rob. Number 1, do clockworks still have a key that can shut them down?
Yes, although it does, the ability way you only shut down if you're incapacitated in Weird Wizard. I think for a horror fantasy game, there is a tension that you'll always roll poorly enough that your key is just going to run down, and so that feels good in a horror game. In a fantasy game, I don't want you to get a feel bad because I don't want you to have to worry about that tension.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
And that's why some of the mechanics are a little different within the ancestries to better reflect the tone and the atmosphere of the game.
So I think you said something there that really kind of made me understand what Shadow of the Weird Wizard is better, in the sense of it's not a horror game. And I think I already kind of intuitively knew that, but you saying that made me understand what the real difference between Shadow of the Demon Lord and Shadow of the Weird Wizard is, right? Is one's horror, one's not. One's playing Call of Cthulhu, the other one's playing RuneQuest. What I mean? Like, that's maybe a crude comparison.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah. And that's really a big part of what took so long, was that Demon Lord's underlying math is built to deliver a horror fantasy experience. Yeah. Weird Wizard is built to deliver a fantastical heroic experience. And so that means characters have to be more durable. They've got to be able to have flashier effects. They've got to be more powerful. And it's got to happen at a slightly different rate and at a higher plateau than Demon Lord characters do. So you'll see Master Paths, for example, are chunkier than they are in Demon Lord. We use bonus damage dice that's a whole separate discussion. But we use a bunch of other things for, like, bonus damage dice let you perform combat stunts and maneuvers that are widely available to create a more cinematic experience. So there are a bunch of these things in play to certainly give you that feeling that I am a capable individual who is helping these people who are fleeing the destruction of the old country as they're getting settled in this borderland area. And because these folks are on the run and they've lost everything, it's already baked into the game that you are heroes because you're the most competent people to be able to protect these newcomers from whatever horrors or creations that are out there. So yeah, everything was kind of, I reconsidered everything from the ground up in this design to ensure that I deliver what I'm promising.
Do players, because it's more of an epic, journey towards being this, awesome hero, do players feel more powerful sooner? Or you said that the plateau is a little bit different, or does it kind of slow down and then really ramp up at the end? How does it feel if I'm playing a character in terms of becoming powerful?
You are never going to start off being a peasant in this game, right? Mm. You're not tilling a field, and you are already really competent right out of the gate. You're durable, you're tough, you can dish out some damage, you've got the right spells to solve problems, you feel pretty capable right out of the gate. When you get just like Demon Lord, I want to make sure that you're not having to absorb a bunch of things all at once. So those options, while you are capable, you're not overwhelmed with a whole lot of things to keep track of. You might have 4 spells and you might have a couple of magic talents, but that's really all you have to worry about for your first level. When you get to level 2, when your group gets to level 2, you get another burst of cool toys to play with, and that continues as you go. And the great thing, what I think is great about this game, is that it encourages mastery because you just have one tool set you're monkeying with at a time. And once you've mastered it, you can then move it to the next level and get your next set of toys, and you can master those in conjunction with what you have. And so by the time you're done, you have a ton of things you can do, but you already know how all that other stuff works because you've been gradually building it up as you go.
Cool.
So one of the hallmarks of Shadow of the Demon Lord was how lethal that sucker was, right? Like, I mean, I remember listening to one of your podcasts that you had done. You're running a game out of your basement, and you're like, yeah, this bandit comes up with a longbow and shot this guy, like literally one-shot him, like first shot out of the game, like he's dead. I'm assuming that with Shadow of the Weird Wizard, it may not feel quite as lethal.
Right.
For the characters, right?
You're not gonna have to worry about taking that kind of shot right out of the gate.
I mean, don't get me wrong, I loved it. I thought
it was hilarious, right? In
Yeah.
fact, it just came up. I ran a hilariously bad session of Weird Wizard that devolved into Demon Lord against my will.
That's awesome.
But that player who spent that time making that clockwork character, he mentioned it to me. I had forgotten all about it. He was like, "Yeah, my dude just you killed me in one shot. The first thing I did in the game." It was like, well, it is Demon Lord,
right?
It's kind of on the tin.
Yeah. I mean, we had a player in Demon Lord one time that survived this giant combat thing, and he looked under this table because he shot a shadow move. It was a shadow monster, and he was frightened, and he looked at it and it scared him again, and with it he rolled a 1 on the d20, which meant he literally had a heart attack and died. And like he had survived this whole big old combat and everything, and he's like, and literally keeled over and died. And I'm like, dude, I'm sorry, there's nothing
he brings that up. He has brought that up so many times over the past 4 years to me. Every time he says, "Hey, remember that time I had that heart attack?"
Mission accomplished.
Yeah,
Yeah,
right.
exactly. So, and I'm okay going into Shadow of the Word Wizard knowing like it's not as lethal for your players, right? I mean, that's one thing that I did need to explain to my players in playing Shadow of the Demon Lord was like, guys, have a backup character ready. Just have it ready, and you can keep leveling it up as you level up, so that we'll just insert it right in and keep playing or whatever. But just be ready for your characters to die in horrific ways and stupid ways and funny ways. Like, I mean, they just die. But Shadow of the Weird Wizard, it doesn't sound like I need to have quite that conversation with him.
No,
I assume that they can probably still die, but just not as frequently or as often.
I mean, they're the one thing when you're building a game, any kind of game like this, there's only so much you can do to insulate the players from themselves.
Yeah.
There are going to be times when the dice are cold. There'll be times when players make decisions that everybody comes to regret. And there's no reason why you can't run Weird Wizard like you would a old school style OSR game where there's a dragon over 3 hexes away and your group is level 1. There's nothing stopping you from going to go mess with this guy. And there are big evil bad guys, the type 6 demon and the dragon and the deep worm and the leviathan, the incarnations. They're all really scary and they can kill you. Your characters, of course, not your players. That would be really weird and cool. But they occupy a spot in the game where if you do get killed by the dragon, you're not probably fighting the dragon until the very end. And at the very end, usually somebody's going to die in the process because that's what heroic adventure is all about, is a great noble sacrifice. Go ahead.
So I was thinking about that a little bit. I know you notice you call Earth with the same spelling. Is this, Shadow of the Demon Lord started at least in the Northern Reach. Is this the same planet but a different time period in a different place, or just a totally different setting?
It is in the same cosmology.
Okay.
Earth spelled with an ERTH, where Earth is spelled URTH. That's
that's the difference. Okay.
My big honor to Mr. Gygax, who had all the different versions of O-Earth and Earth and Aerith and all those other places. It's totally to show my affection for the granddaddy of them all. But this world exists somewhere through the void, and it's somewhere else. That means that what is true in Demon Lord could be true in Weird Wizard. And there are elements that I have seeded into this game for fans of Demon Lord, and they're Easter eggs that gives you an opportunity to, if you wanted to, bring some of that evil deadness into your games.
Are we going to find a crack in the void somewhere?
Maybe.
Maybe. Okay. Maybe.
We did unlock Howl of the Void, which is
yes.
Right. So we've got a book of demons and the void and all that stuff. Now, will I talk about the Demon Lord? You might get a mention, but we're probably going to focus on the misbegotten son of Father Death, Abaddon the Destroyer, who has been exiled from reality and is lurking in the shadows of the void, waiting for his chance to break. Oh, it could be the same thing, but we'll see.
Just like in your supplement that you had with the elves, right? That the new I'm mixing up words here. The god of the new, what is it? The new cult. The new god, right? Was really basically Satan in the world, right? Yeah. So father of death, Abaddon, I guess you're calling him. He may be one and the same.
The mythology of this game posits that Father Death created the universe in order to create death, and in only for death to exist, you have to have life. And so he seeded this world with life, and then this pantheon grows up around him, and there are the older gods, and then there are the newer gods that kind of live in this extended pantheon, the Circle of 13. Then there is the Church of the High One, and the High One is an interloper deity that came from somewhere else, who drove the adversary out of paradise, which he had conquered from some other primordial figure, and cast him down into the netherworld. We don't know much about the adversary in this game yet.
I love this lore. I just drink it up, man. It's awesome.
That's good.
Yeah,
Good.
I love the mix of these common themes from, like, people who brought up with Christianity, and you get this little feel of it, but then there's a twist in there that changes what's in your head. Just love it.
I was really surprised by the reaction to Exquisite Agony, was where we revealed that the new god is actually just a mask of the adversary, or the devil. Man, people just did not like that at all.
Oh, really? Oh, man,
Really?
that was awesome.
It's so bleak. It is so bleak.
That's true.
I mean, it was like, to me, it was amazing, because I'm like, here's all these cult of the new god, like, inquisitors and priests and stuff like that, basically out there doing the bidding of the person who, like, they're trying to fight against. Like, it just was amazing. Right?
I thought it was perfect. I mean, when you start playing this game, you tell them the world is dying, like, it will come to an end soon. And then this happens, like, it told you,
I had a guy who played basically a super zealot of the cult of the new god, and he, like, I did a little side mission with him where he ended up, like, honing in on this nun, but she knew the truth of it, and she was still the worshiper. Like, she was a zealot herself.
Oh, wow.
And basically imbued him with this, like, power of knowledge, and, like, it really, like, turned his character. Like, he was, like, all super righteous, and then, like, all of a sudden he was just like, I am bringing about the master's will, and so it was pretty epic. That was near the end of our campaign, but but that was a fun thing to play, right? Because it's like, that lore really allowed kind of this sort of snake in the grass, in a sense, to be there, so. Yeah.
But we could talk Shadow of the Demon Lord with you all day. We ran that game so much, we just loved it. But Weird Wizard. So back to that, right? So let me ask you, are there any ancestries you've created that you feel are unique to this over other things, or ones that you like the most?
Right. So there's an ancestry called the Deva, and it went through a couple different versions. I had wanted to have, like, an angel type dude, but I didn't really want to make it an angel type dude because I already had the Archon. And Archons, we talk about the Archon first. There are every god has angels in this world. So Father Death has angels. They're called Reapers or Valkyrie. Father Death has those. Then Fury, which is the goddess of war, she has Valkyrie, and you've got these big Leshies that walk around that are servants of Grandfather Tree, and then there's a fungal, and there's all sorts of angels, right? And they manifest in the world, and they do the bidding of the gods. But the High One has all these seraphs, and they are metal-skinned humanoid people that look like angels, but they're androgynous, and they have no free will at all. Their job is to carry out the mission, follow the orders of the High One, and never deviate. If they deviate at all or develop any personality, the High One rips off their wings and throws them out of heaven. And they are condemned to wander the world until they find the embrace of oblivion, because they have no souls either. They're just constructs, basically. So Archons are one thing, but I felt like that covered that, because I felt that it was interesting for a heroic game to be an edgy type character, but you could have gained free will, and maybe it was a High One's will that you gained free will, so that you could do something in the mortal world without divine intervention, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
There's a way you can bend that to still be you could completely be heroic. And in fact, there's an adventure I'm writing right now, or a quest I'm writing, called Burning Feathers, which is about an Archon who is so disillusioned he becomes this terrifying villain, and your characters are having to track him down and outwit him before he burns down all the temples of the High One in this particular region. So yeah, but the other one, the one I'm really excited about is the Deva. So I thought about like the Atlantis myth, and I was thinking about like why gods would wipe out a mortal civilization. And so I invented this civilization called Araldia, and they're for some civilization from the ancient past. And they had decided that the gods were not worthy of worship and they could become like them. And so the gods decided, the Father Death particularly, just said enough and wiped them out. But to save their civilization, they migrated their souls, which was an actual thing, into these shards, these crystals, and they seeded them throughout the world, and where they have lain dormant for all this time. So if you're a human, you run across one of these things, you can pick it up, and it awakens a crystal, and then you can bond with the entity. And so the soul essence moves out of the crystal into your character, and so you have this luminous being that lives inside of you. And so when you're playing, you can have your luminous symbiote leave your body and also participate in combat and do other things too, which is kind of neat. So it gives you like an ability to play
that sounds cool.
two characters at once, and then that character can then merge back with you. And if the luminous symbiote dies, you just turn back into a human, no harm, no foul. But it does create a cool way to individuate your character from everybody else, because you get to do this special thing. And there's going to be like the usual suspects. We've got hobgoblins and dwarves and clockworks and wood roses and other stuff like that. But the Devas were pretty interesting.
Is the Deva, does he take control of the human, or is it more of like a symbiotic relationship where they're two together making decisions together? Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
So it's like Venom.
It's do you watch the Doom Patrol?
Oh yeah. Okay.
So it's like the doctor, the guy with the mummy wrappings.
Yep. Okay.
He was my inspiration for this archetype.
Nice. Okay. Cool. All right. That makes sense. Well, let me pull up your Kickstarter page here, because we still have 2 weeks left in your Kickstarter campaign, which, if our listeners are at this point right now, you should also go to the Kickstarter campaign. And if you have not already pledged, do so. You can see here, Rob, that I've already backed this. I backed this day one.
Thank you, kitten.
You're welcome.
We're done brown nosing. Can we go to the?
Yeah, right. No. Exactly. So you are well past your goal that you had set out. I think you blew past this in like the first 15 minutes, maybe.
Yeah, we funded pretty fast.
Yeah.
I think at day one we did all that Demon Lord did in the first day, which was really exciting and also terrifying.
Yeah.
But
So that's the amazing thing, is like, if folks are like, oh, I don't know about Kickstarter, I don't know if I should do it. I mean, this is already funded, which means things are moving out. So like, hop on the train, because the train's rolling, right? So it's not like some of those like, hey, well, we want $1 million and we'll come out with a video game maybe one day. Like, this is already funded and ready to go.
And it's also probably worth mentioning too, the game's already written. It's in editing,
right,
and we're waiting on art, and all that stuff has been ordered. It's all in the works.
Absolutely. So let's look and see what we have here. So you have the game, right? This like you said, the game is written, and I want to pull up the books here. So this is the Shadow of the Weird Wizard book. It's a 350-page full color hardback and digital book. And I think the first level that you get the actual books in hand is the it's the expert level, right?
Right.
Yes. So the expert wizard, you get a copy of the Shadow of the Weird Wizard and Secrets of the Weird Wizard. Now, what's the difference between those two books?
The Shadow of the Weird Wizard book gives you everything that you need to know as a player. It's also important for the Sage, which is also what we call Game Masters. So it has all the core rules, magic, all the paths, equipment, and then character creation, of course. The Secrets of the Weird Wizard gives you the Sage Advice. See where I was going with that. Sage Advice chapter. It gives you the setting, which covers the Borderlands and a little bit beyond, and then it also gives you a really, really chunky bestiary, so you have plenty of things to play with.
Nice.
Also, the Secrets of the Weird Wizard is the home for all ancestries other than human, which puts the access to these other ancestries in the hands of the game master on purpose, because the story that we're trying to tell with Weird Wizard is very human to begin with. And as you play the game, you'll have opportunities to encounter new peoples, and those characters can kind of organically enter your campaigns. And as you become more familiar with the game, as a sage, you'll probably decide to open it up to more options. So if you want to play a centaur or a rabbit person or whatever, those options will be there.
Awesome. Yeah, very cool. Now I remember, like, this is one of the things that stood out to me right here, which is 33 traditions of magic, which is a lot, each with 4 magical talents and 18 spells for each. So I'm trying to do the math here. 33 times 18 is like 500.
It's spells? A whole lot. It's a whole lot. And let me tell you, it was a. So if you're a demon, if you come to this game from Demon Lord broke spells into ranks. So spells were rank 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 through 10. What I did with this one was that I collapsed spells down into 3 basic categories: novice, expert, master, and that lets those spells do what they need to do. And I've got enough wiggle room. When you cast an expert spell, feels a lot more powerful than a novice spell. You're going to notice a big difference when you get your expert path and you fire off a fireball, or you take over somebody or do something else. Right, all those spells feel chunkier. And then when you're raining stars out of the sky at the master path, you're going to feel pretty badass.
Nice.
One of the things that I loved about Demon Lord that I feel like is, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like it's going to be in here, is that your spell traditions were very unique. Like, you had like the Chronomancer tradition, or the was it the teleportation tradition?
Right.
Where you could, like, you had that one where you could teleport into the future and see something, right? And if it went wrong, like, you ended up coming back as like a really old person or something like that.
Right.
So, they were super unique. I really loved, like, the song tradition that you had, right? Like the singer tradition. And so I feel like with 33, this isn't like D&D 5e that is just like, okay, well, here's your frost spells, okay, here's your sorcerer spells, here's your, like every tradition felt super unique, and I loved it about that.
I try to keep to that as close as I could. It's important that spells be the thing that differentiate spellcasters from each other. So you could have a group of 4 magicians in your group, and then each of them play very differently. You might have one who's into war magic, and that person who's into war magic is moving around the battlefield and chopping up bad guys, while you might have a diviner who is manipulating dice because they're anticipating the future, or they're revealing unspeakable truths about this bad guy's fate, which then causes them to have all sorts of ennui and angst. So you've got because the way the traditions are structured, that you can then, more than in Demon Lord, you can completely focus on one tradition. Where if you just want to be, I want to be pyromancy all the way, they can go that route and go completely fire, or you can diversify and have all sorts of fun toys in your toolbox, or your toy box rather.
Yeah, I think like, for example, I can't tell you what the difference between a wizard and a sorcerer in D&D is, other than maybe one has a spell book and one
the wild magic.
Use, because the thing is both of them can take fireball. You know what I mean? Like, both of them can take like the same spells, and so what that ends up doing is you end up min-maxing a little bit with your spells, so that everybody's got kind of the same spells, and nobody feels unique except for maybe some of their mechanics that they do.
Or
versus-
someone who like intentionally wants to feel unique, right?
Right, exactly.
So they drive their character development that way. But it's easy to fall in. It's really easy to fall into a mold that feels the same. All right, it's the caster's turn. Which one? Doesn't matter. Just it's the caster's turn.
Yeah, exactly. And like this one, I feel like you know, you like you said, you could play very much a support role with your magic user. You know, like the song traditions and Demon Lord like was very much a support role that they would do. You know, and so I'm looking forward to digging into these, because if they feel as unique as they did before in your previous game, then I'm a happy camper.
Okay, so
You know?
all right, so give us a spell. What's a spell that's on the top of your head that you think is a fun one in this game?
Summon the maggot of Shadraza, I think. It is there's a mythical city, and it's crawling with larvae, and you pluck one from this mythical city and cause it to appear in front of you. It wails as it's out, and then after a certain period of time, it will transform into a human-headed fly and wreak havoc on your bad guys. That is an edgier spell. It belongs to the Eldritch tradition, so it's probably not for everybody. The chronomancy tradition is just loaded with all sorts of cool things. I kept the idea of being able to summon yourself from the future, so you can kind of help yourself out, and then the ability to jump through time. We have all the elemental style traditions let you bind a spirit called a pneuma to the elements, and so you can turn them into henchmen. We've got there's another Eldritch spell that I really, really love, which is called the Pale Rider, after a Tom Waits album. But it summons this creepy old dude who shows up on your back and gums the top of your head and rides you like a horse. And so, it's supposed to like terrify the target. So it's just stuff like that, right? But it's also going to have a lot of the expected things too. You need a flying platform, or you want to secure your area, or summon a boat.
Yeah.
All those kinds of things are in there too. One thing that is different is every tradition includes, it's mentioned there, but 4 magical talents. When you get a tradition, you get a talent for free from that tradition. And so the aeromancy tradition, for example, lets you call down a bolt of lightning to energize yourself. And so for a period of time, you're crackling electricity and you're getting to do cool stuff. And the tradition has it on a timer or gives you a number of uses. So that's kind of fun. But they change your character in more meaningful ways than just being able to cast a spell and forget about it. So these are more lasting effects, or they may tweak you in some way.
Very cool. That's one thing that I did like about some of your support spells that you had, like you talked about the battle magic and Shout of the Demon Lord. You know, like you would cast that on yourself, and I mean, you would just be like running and ducking and weaving and chopping and hacking, and I mean, it really had some like. It was more than like in D&D where it'd be like, okay, blessed blade, like you touch the blade and sure you get extra damage. Like it really felt like you were
battle
using
magic.
This battle magic,
Yeah.
you know. And so I'm looking forward to that kind of stuff in the Shadow of the Weird Wizard here. So we talked about Secrets of the Weird Wizard. I mean, this is in itself is no slouch either at 325 pages. So you're looking at like, you know, if you do the $99 pledge for physical books, you're looking at like, you know, 675 pages.
It's probably be a little bit more than that.
Yeah.
Plus you get all the stretch goals.
Yes, exactly. Which let's talk. And you know, of course, you get the one bad apple. This is the Jason ran at Gen Con. What was it? The apple?
The apple in her.
Apple in her eye.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that was a long time ago. But yes.
Yeah, he ran that at Gen Con for Shadow of the Demon Lord.
That was great. Great.
So yeah, one bad apple. But let's talk about so you can get some miniatures too if you're totally into it. And these are great looking miniatures too, by the way. But the stretch goals. This is the thing that excites me so much about this is, I mean, you like within the first like 3 days like blew through your initial set of stretch goals. And I think on one hand, you're probably super psyched about it, but on the other hand, you're like, oh my gosh, that's so much
Hope
more
you have a
that we gotta
comfortable
do
chair
now.
to sit in.
Yeah, I mean, as I've it does look like a lot. I think what you're going to get by backing the Kickstarter is a full line,
Mhm.
because what we're seeing here is pretty much everything I would do for this game anyway, plus
Yeah.
a few other things. You know, you probably notice there's a lot of quests. I think
Yeah.
now we're up to 30. We get the 210 quests, stretch goals, plus the 290 gave us 10 more, plus the one that you get for backing the campaign to start with. There's 31 quests, plus 2 campaigns, Rage of the Goblin
Yeah.
King. And there's the other one that's Fury of the Ancient one. No, that may be something else.
There was definitely one other one in there.
Right, it's probably Fury of the Ancient ones.
Yeah.
Which should give you each of those as 10 quests as well. So now we're up to 51.
Yeah.
It's important to me to make sure that you have a playable game. Often a game will come out and there's just not a lot of adventure content. You just have the game, but not a lot to do with it. And it's more important for me to make as many adventures as possible so that people can have no excuse, right? It's like, well, I can jump in and play whatever I want, whenever I want.
I mean, that's like if you think that most groups play either once every 2 weeks or sometimes once a month, that's like years of content.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's good stuff.
You know, it's funny you say that. I am looking at my shelf right now, and I picked up the Witcher RPG like 3 or 4 years ago. 4 years ago, right when it came out. I was really excited about it. This is before the Netflix show made it super popular, but I had read all the Witcher books, you know, and so R. Talsorian kind of made this Witcher game. And I picked it up and I read it and I said, all right, well, now what am I going to do with this? Do you know what I mean? Because there's no other content. Like I'd really have to kind of make my own campaign.
Yeah,
and I just was like, I don't know how I'm going to do that with this core rule book, you know? And so having all of these quests, right? You got the novice quest that comes with a Kickstarter. That's the one, right? And then you got the 30 quests plus the other campaigns. Like, I mean, you've got so many places that you can start to play this game. And one of the things that I know Jason and I have talked about on our podcast before that we love about Schwalb Entertainment is your support for your games that you have. Like the Shadow of the Demon Lord would come out with a game and it'd be like a little session, right? It's like a little adventure, and it was like $2 or $3 to pick it up and play. And it was just like was such an easy entry to just keep playing your game. And you know, having all of this stuff, excuse me, definitely feels the same way.
Yeah, and I mean, you know, those were Rob. It's just an amazing way that you give to the community, because $3 for 6 friends to sit around a table and play for 4 hours, that's just, you know, how else can you get that level of like entertainment for dollar value? You know, it's really good.
Yeah, I mean the adventures just you know, I'm not going to lie and say I make a lot of money on the adventures, right? It's it's common knowledge that adventure content sells 1/5 the amount that you'll sell of anything else. But as far as advertising goes, and encouraging people to pick up the rule book, I don't understand why more people don't do it. But I also, you know, they're expensive to make, and unless, you know, I'm the principal designer for everything that comes out for my company, so I do almost all the writing. So, and writing's free, right? So it's
yeah. Well, I mean, your time is not free, right? But I mean, you do it for your company. You don't have to pay a writer, is what you're saying, basically, right? So, yeah, absolutely. And so, I guess my question is this: is like you're coming out. This is way more content than the Demon Lord Kickstarter had on its initial pass, right? And like I told you, I backed this for $99, and I feel like I'm getting way more than my money's worth here. You know, like it's it's such an amazing value with all of these unlocked stretch goals. Do you see you talked about like this is pretty much all the content that you may have for this game. Do you see yourself like producing more adventures or background? Like you used to have like kind of like supplements that would focus on the halflings, or supplements that would focus on the northern regions or K-Chris or something like that would kind of give a little bit more flavor or background, or extra things like that. Do you see yourself kind of putting out more things like that for Weird Wizard?
I do. I think that we're always going to be. I'll always be publishing quests for the game. There are lots of places to explore, and if we get to the crazy level of Lost Lands of Earth, that it basically triples or quadruples the size of the world. So you've got all sorts of other places to explore, which then gives me fertile ground for growing new product, because I can explore. I can reveal more details about where the sphinxes come from, or maybe a whole campaign based on descending into an underwater campaign where you go to Lost Heraldia, or any other, all sorts of other places we can go. So yeah, I definitely think that this is just going to be the starting point. I'll do this until I get tired of it, which is probably, like somebody, I did another stream earlier tonight, and I was asked if Demon Lord was going to continue. And, my answer is like, Demon Lord's not going anywhere, because I still have more stuff to tell, and it's a different game. There's more stuff to show you, and more ways for me to be angry and vent it onto the page. So, yeah.
Now, one of the things that I have seen, again, we talked about the ups and downs of bringing this to market, right? And some of the downs that I have seen, like on your Facebook page, has been dealing with the Kickstarter process, right? I think you said Kickstarter may be the end of me at one point,
Yeah, it's a lot. There's this Kickstarter itself is deceptively simple. You don't have to do much to get it out there, but to be successful, you have to do a lot. And I've spent the last 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, 4 years, pretty much turtled up, right? With the pandemic, and then my in-laws both had sharp declines in their health, led to my wife having to live with them. And then they both passed, and then my stepfather passed, and then Kim Mohan passed. I lost 2 animals. I've been pretty much locked inside of my own little world. And, this was pretty much me going back and saying, hey, I'm still making games. I'm still doing stuff. And that it is a very stressful experience to try to knock off that rust and get back out there and talk in a polite manner, instead of shrieking into the void as I've been for the previous couple of years. So it is and there are a lot of places to spend. You get it's being active on social media, and obviously doing streams, which are always fun. But then, of course, there are the intricacies of the Kickstarter itself, right? Canceled pledges are always exciting to see why that happens, because doesn't matter how successful the campaign can be, you see a canceled pledge, and then it's like, what did I do? What did I say? What happened that I could not hold this person for 30 days? And so that of course is just like it just chews at you. So, but it's just all part of it.
And it seems like, that there is a rhythm to especially RPG campaigns and board games to a certain extent as well, which is, it initially hits and there's a huge wave in the beginning, right? Like the first 3 days you end up, like if you're a popular Kickstarter, you may blow through your, your initial ask and through many of your stretch goals and things like that, which I think we saw with this campaign. And then it either goes to a little bit more steady stream, right? It's not as exponential as it was in the beginning. It kind of like levels off a little bit, or it stagnates a little bit. And then near the end, then you'll see kind of a rush of those people that were on the fence about it before that end up wanting to get in. So it's kind of like a two waves, like a beginning and end wave with some doldrums in the middle. It seems like.
Yeah, that's the doldrums are the tough part. I mean, because Demon Lord and this one are both 30-day campaign. Both been 30-day campaigns. In previous campaigns, I experimented with shorter to just skip over that dead time that happens in the middle. I don't know that helped me or not. I mean, they were much more focused on we're delivering a very particular product for a game, and they didn't come anywhere close to this. But they funded. That's what's important.
Mm-hmm.
Now, one of the things that I thought it was interesting was your stretch goal upgrade, right? Which was with that, everybody who backed, I think 99 and above, were given print on demand coupons, right? Where they could pay cost for any book that was over 90 pages?
32 pages.
32 pages. Okay. 32 pages. Which is a lot of like for example, the Halls of the Mountain King, the Rage of the Goblin King campaign, right? Like a lot of these source books are about 30 pages. So you could do a print on demand. And you did that with your last Kickstarter, which was the spells one for Shadow of the Demon Lord.
Right. Occult Philosophy.
Yeah, occult philosophy. So that I was very interested to see that in the stretch goal upgrade, because I can absolutely see myself paying for that print on demand books and have the collection on my shelf, right?
Yep.
Yeah, and it's the reason for delaying that release is that it's extra work. We have to the guts of that file are effectively the same, although they're at a higher resolution for printing. But then we have to design the cover differently, and we have to have a wrap around cover and all that extra stuff. So it's a little bit extra work for Kara, who handles all my layout and graphic design. But I don't want to have to stop people from getting the cool stuff.
Yeah. All right. So the last question I have for you, and I know we're kind of a little over what we had said for time, but the conversation has been so engaging. The last question I have for you is, when this comes out, right? Which I think you said that it will ship early next year. What did August 2024? So in about a year. Are there plans to bring this to any conventions? Are you planning to do the tour like you used to? The pandemic put a big giant on hold for you, I know, for a lot of conventions and things like that.
Yeah. I'm going to be at UConn in Ann Arbor this November.
Okay.
It looks like I will probably be at GaryCon, although I'm not sure that I'm going to be a guest. I think I'm just going to go. And I might not even actually attend the show. I just may be at the hotel drinking beer at the bar.
Fair enough.
That may be what I do. And then I've got a show in Phoenix in March. That's GaryCon's also in March, so it'll be next year. And then that's all I have scheduled right now. Gamehole Con for 2024 is probably in the mix. I'm not sure how much I'm going to take this on the road. I don't know. As I'm getting close to 50, I'm finding that it's less and less exciting for me.
Sure. Yeah. No. Listen, I totally get that, and it's one thing to attend some of these conventions and just be there, as someone to just kind of schmooze around with people, and another thing to actually put in the work and run game after game after game. We played Dragonbane, which was a Free Leagues game that just they had just re-released, and the GM that had run our game, he's like, "This is the 50th session that I have done this year of this," and because he'd been going from con to con to con to con to con, and that's the only thing he was running. Like every 4 hours at Gen Con, he was running a different session. And I'm like, I don't think I could do it, buddy. Like,
the most intense weekend I had was GaryCon when I was running the Demon Lord Kickstarter. And that show ran, I thought it was Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And it was 3, 6, 9. I think I ran 10 sessions that weekend.
Oh, my gosh.
And it was about as close to. And while running a Kickstarter, right? So between every adventure, I'd get an hour break and frantically check the Kickstarter page to see if my 4
People
hours
had
of
pledged.
right,
Yeah.
which is like selling, encyclopedias, right? It's like one customer, it's like going door to door to, hey kid, you want to buy a Bible? It's just kind of, it's not the most wise use of my time, but
Yeah.
but I do like running games, especially at conventions. I think OrcaCon had a really great program because you only were on the hook for a 2-hour slot, so you'd only have, which was great because you could just you'd be there long enough to teach the game, and because Demon Lord is really easy to learn, you can go in, give them the nuts and bolts in 10 minutes, tell a cool story, and then they leave on a high note. No one's kind of glazing over.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's good stuff.
Well, I tell you, the year that we went to Gen Con and we literally had a room in the bottom of a Marriott, and there were just 2 tables, me and Justin, and we were running Shadow the Demon Lords, and we had full tables like the whole con.
Awesome.
And it was a lot of fun. But there was a lot of running events.
Yeah. Because we did it for the GM badge, and you had to do like a certain amount of player hours.
But it was so fun.
Yeah.
Cool.
Made some friends that I'm still friends with today that live
Awesome.
across the country, and we still keep in touch. So it's pretty good stuff.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for running those games.
Yeah, man. Yeah, well, looking forward to running some Weird Wizard.
Hell yeah.
Exactly. Because had it not been for some random guy, and I wish I knew his name because we didn't really get to know him.
I can
but
picture
he was
him
running.
perfectly.
I know, me too. He was running a Shadow of the Demon Lord game, and Jason and I had an opening on our schedule. And we're like, well, let's try this out. This sounds interesting. And that was 2017, I think, Jason. Yeah, it was 2017.
Like it was somewhere in there, yeah.
Maybe 2016.
I think it was the year right after Kickstarter, so it might have been 16.
Yeah. And he ran A Year Without Rain, and we played that game, and we were like, we're in. Yeah. We're totally hooked. I walked out of that and literally ordered the book from Amazon.
We went and canceled our D&D campaign. We told everyone, see ya. And then
so, even if I don't do this for the GM badge next year or whenever at Gen Con, like maybe I'll just run a session because I just, love playing the game or something like that. Which would be, I think, a ton of fun.
That's what this is all about anyways.
Yeah. So, Rob, thank you so much for being on the show. We appreciate your insight, your humor, your dark humor. And, we didn't mention any mayonnaise. No
mayonnaise. Well, that we have.
No mayonnaise. Yeah. But we definitely appreciate you coming on the show and giving us some of your time. We know it's valuable. We know you got a lot of stuff going on with the Kickstarter, but we appreciate you doing this. And we hope that our listeners out there, again, if you have not backed this Kickstarter, I can't tell you how much, I can't express to you how much value you're going to get out of this right now. So go back it. I implore you to go back it because it is something that you will not regret and that you'll just be inundated with amazing products. So please go check it out. Please go sign up for it. And Rob, we wish you the best. Got my fingers crossed for this $400,000 stretch goal of Lost Lands of Earth, and I hope we get there soon.
I feel good about it. So thanks, guys, so much for having me. Yeah. It's really good to see you again.
Yeah.
We'll have to do this again sometime soon.
Absolutely. Thank you, everybody, and we will see you all at the tables. Have a good night.